Hi everyone, thank you for watching. My name is Shoair Mavlian and I'm really happy to be talking today with Hrair Sarkissian, a photographer and someone who I have known and worked with for a very long time now. So it's really good to share this conversation. And thank you to Landskrona Festival for inviting both of us to speak. And I'm really excited that Landskrona Festival is showing Hrair's work. Okay, so we're going to start by talking about Hrair's practice in general. It would be really good to hear a little bit of background about your work. And then we'll speak more specifically about several bodies of work, particularly the work Unexposed, which is on show at the festival. And then let's see how the conversation goes. So Hrair, would you like to start by telling us a little bit about yourself and your background, and how you came to be a photographer and developed your practice?
Hi, Shoair. Thank you for this interview, and also thank you for the festival inviting me. So I started photography at my father's lab. My father's used to be a photographer independent photographer for 30 years, and 1976 he opened the first color lab in Syria, in Damascus. And for me, this lab, it was the place where I spent most of my childhood. I remember in the summer I went the day the school was finished. Then the next day I went to work in the lab, in the shop. Sorry. So technically, this place, it's my academy, and it's where I learned my photographic skills, and I worked there for a quite long time. And after I finished high school, I took over for 12 years, managing the lab, and I think it was in 2005 or 6, I reached a point that I really wanted, because that was the end. There was nothing more to reach in the lab. I've done everything. I just wanted to become a photographer. I always wanted to be, but there was always the obstacle of the shop. It was the family business. So, and then I decided to stop and become a photographer. And I started to travel more and more, especially to Europe, and going to exhibitions, because I mean, back then in Damascus, we didn't have many contemporary photographic resources. We had only the French Cultural Center library, where used to go there and look, dig for books, the classical photography books. And from time to time, there was conferences, and it was there where I was first introduced to contemporary photography in the French Cultural Center in Damascus. It was a lecture by the director of Museum of Niepce, François Chauval, where he presented works by Patrick Tozani, Sophie Ristel-Hubert, Antoine D'Agata. And for me, that was like a complete shock, seeing the works that they've been doing. And suddenly I completely flipped and started to, I stopped making pictures basically every Sunday during the weekend. And I started more to look for problems, let's say. And the whole process, it became more by time and by seeing other exhibitions and traveling abroad, meeting other photographers. It was very enriching for me to come and to reach to the level that's of photography that I am doing now. And I've been doing this for almost 15 years now.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's my basic thing, my main thing.
It's super interesting how you describe your introduction to photography, because in one way you have this, you have this very traditional training. You are a photographer in the purest sense, that you were technically working in a studio, you were working in a lab, you knew the medium so well in terms of the physicality of it and the technicality of it. But then describing that moment where it was like you discovered something, you discovered a different side of photography. That must have been really, really exciting and really surprising, I guess, as well.
It was quite a shock for me, actually, to see all these big, like these images screened on this massive screen in the theater. And I still remember the first thing that really shocked me, and I still have these images in my mind, the images of Patrick Tozani, where he photographed spoons, the surface of the spoon. And for me, it was like, what is this? You know, it's like, I've never seen anyone photograph. Why would you photograph a spoon? Or he had another work where he photographed his nails, just cutting nails and photographing them, or the heels of shoes. And all, until today, these works of him, it's still, for me, it's quite, if I want to wake up someone doing like photography, I want to wake up someone like an amateur, or I just show these works to him or her just as a reference, that the world is not only that type of photography, there's also this type, which is, I think it's more interesting, and there's more yeah, I don't know, it's like now, especially now, everybody does take pictures, it's like
Yeah.
So
yeah, it's true. And so then from there, when you began traveling and you kind of shifted your idea of what photography was, at one point you started making conceptual projects, or like research-based projects that were on a specific theme or a specific research topic, and they were kind of relatively medium to long-term projects. Is that right?
Yeah, correct. Yes.
Yeah. And then two of them that we should talk about, I kind of felt like we're linked in some way. And the first project is History from 2012. So a project made shot in Istanbul, and really kind of researching the history of delving into your family history, but also the family history of
the unidentified history of the Armenians.
Exactly,
More, yes.
exactly. And then Unexposed, which is almost for me like a follow-on of that research and of that investigation. And we actually showed in 2014, we exhibited History in the exhibition at Tate Modern Conflict Time Photography.
Right.
And that exhibition was about looking back at past events. And around the time of the exhibition in 2014, it was almost 100 years since the beginning of the Armenian Genocide. So this was a really kind of important moment to look at that project that was researching and investigating an event that happened almost a century ago.
Yeah.
Did you want to talk about that project a little bit?
Sure. Well, the project History, it came up. I was doing this a residency at in Istanbul at what is it called now? I forgot the name. Galata? No.
Oh, it's not at Salt.
Salt, yes.
Yeah.
So I was doing this this residency at Salt, where I was supposed to do the project about the Unexposed project, but it was so difficult to find references and to find also people to helping me finding families, etc. So I came up one of the days, I was just walking around. I went to this exhibition at the City Hall in Istanbul. by coincidence. So at the entrance, there was this timeline on the wall where starting from 1400, where the Ottoman Empire was created, until recent days of current Republic of Turkey. So, and each year they mentioned like something important that has been achieved in the history of the of Turkey. So I was just following this date, and then I just realized there is like 1915 was missing on this timeline. It did not exist, and that was really shocking for me. That it's because of they don't recognize the Armenian Genocide. So I came about this idea of going to public libraries and public archive centers and the National Archive Center, where they keep all these books and documents that relates to the existence of the Armenians in Turkey, their history, and also the documents that also deals with the Armenian Genocide. And I wanted to just to put myself in this space and just face these books face to face and photograph as well. And it was quite, I mean, it was a quite long procedure to do this project. And also, I would say very difficult sentimentally, because contacting these institutions, some of them were really, the moment they see my name, because my name is a very Armenian name, so immediately they start to ask questions why he wants to do this. Of course, I never told them my main goal of the project, the reason I wanted to do it. I just said I just wanted to photograph, archive the history which exists in books, etc. So many of these places refused. They did not give me access, and some of them restricted. For instance, there was the National Archive Center, the director brought a translator to speak in Arabic with me and translate. And after asking many questions, he ended up letting me just to photograph the reading room, where there are no books. There are only empty cupboards. And this is the place where you ask a book, like you give them a reference of a book and they bring you the book to read. And he said, that's the only place I can allow you to photograph. And actually the National Archive Center is the place where they host all the documents that relate to the Armenian Genocide from the Ottoman Empire, and which part of them were also burned in the 80s by the Minister of Interior. So that's, I mean, that's why I from here I went to other places. Some of them were very welcoming, and some of them were very suspicious, and some of them they just denied my giving me access to these spaces.
And when you were, because I find this fascinating, because you know it's really your family history is something you can't hide, because it's written in your name, right? There's no way you can get around that. So it's immediate when you ask for permission, or when you arrive at this place. It's recognized who you are or your background, and also probably some type of suspicion as to why you're there. There is an assumed reason for you being there.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah, and when you entered those spaces, because they are really, you know, they're quite sterile spaces in a way. They're meant to house things for prosperity. They're meant to keep things in good conditions. Some of them, there's different variations of places that you went. So some of them are relatively modern, others are really kind of historic buildings. Yeah, historic buildings. And how did you feel when you're in those spaces? First of all, were you on your own when you went? And like, how long did you get to spend there? Was there any investigating that you could do while you were maybe left alone for a few minutes?
No, so the thing in all of these places, except some of them were like private collection, that was okay. But in most of these places, I was not allowed to touch any of these books or doc anything. So I was just allowed to walk around and take pictures, but nothing further. And in some of the places, there was someone, one or two persons who were accompanying me. One of these places is, for instance, the Bayezid Library, which is like from 1400, the first public library in the Ottoman Empire. So in this place, I had two guards with me, following me wherever I went, and every time I took a picture, I had to show them on the view camera. I have to show them the frame, and also take a picture with my small digital camera, so they can have a copy of the image, because I don't use a digital, I use analog films. So that was the process in most of these cases. And also, I think the ironic thing is also in this, I think I need to mention, while doing this project and staying in Turkey, wherever I went to this, to public places like restaurants, cafes, where so people did not believe that I am not Turkish. You know, so whenever I asked for the menu, the English one, they said, no, but you are Turkish, you don't read, you know, they thought that I am kind of superficial, or, and this is kind of, for me, it's quite ironic, because I originally, me and my family, we come from there, you know, and by denying our history, our existence, you're also denying my existence as well now. So you do not accept it. So that was quite shocking for me in this process. And this is one of the reasons also I wanted to do this project, because if these books do not exist or you don't recognize, it means I also don't exist. I am also no one in that sense.
Yeah, yeah, it's true. And this really kind of clear connection between, although it was 100 years after, or almost 100 years after those events began, the connection and the link is still very much there, and the history is very much there. It's just hidden away out of access, or at least out of access for you to investigate. And I guess it's important to tell the audience that these images, when they're exhibited, are almost life-size. They're really large scale, and you feel almost as if like you could walk into them. So they are these architectural spaces with these long bookshelves on either side. Yeah, corridors of archives and books, and it really gives you this sense of the amount of history and that can be contained in a relatively small space.
Yeah, my idea also was to depict this space and let the viewer also sort of emerge in this image once it is projected on the wall. I think it's quite important also, knowing the history and then looking at the image, it kind of absorbs you also inside, because it's at the end it's all about history, and it's been like 1500 years or even more, some of these places. So that was quite interesting to see this relationship.
Yeah, definitely. And you mentioned that when you were there doing the residency, you had intended to make the Unexposed project. So that wasn't able to happen at that time. So you made History. And then when you left that residency and when you left Istanbul, was that project that you weren't able to complete, was that on your mind for quite a while, and you were trying to figure out a way to make it happen?
The Unexposed, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, the Unexposed is stayed on my mind for 3 years. And so I went there, and it was really impossible to find anyone to help me, even within the Armenian community. I was kind of rejected. So it was also shocking, for instance, when I met someone from the Patriarchy of the Armenians in Istanbul, and he said, no, this thing didn't happen. You know, obviously for security reasons, he just, of course, he didn't know me, and probably he's protecting himself, or I don't know for what reason, but he just denied the whole idea of the Armenians being converted or forced to convert into Islam during the genocide. So but I waited 3 years, and then through friends, I found someone in New York who a Turkish academic. She's been doing her PhD's research about this same topic. So I explained to her, and she was very helpful and very generous, and she put me in touch directly with the person Becker, who is the head of these people who convert, who come from small villages and convert in Istanbul, and because the whole movement is, most of them, they come from small villages and they come into Istanbul because it's a bigger city, and they just can kind of get lost in the bigger society fabric.
How did you find out? How did you find out about this to begin with? So
I was shocked.
Yeah, how did
was
you come
shocked
across this story?
because for me it was I knew that I was more researching about the Hamshens, the Armenians who converted hundreds of years ago into Islam. And by coincidence, I came, when I was on YouTube researching, I came into the video of Bakr, the same person who I got introduced later to. And I was really shocked listening to his story, because Bakr is originally Kurdish and communist. And he finds out from his dad that he is Armenian, because the thing that really clicked for him, it was when in their family, whenever they sit down at the table or they want to stand up, they say Ya Jesus, which means oh Jesus. You know, this is something stayed for like years, like since the genocide, it stayed in them, and from then he asked, why do we say Jesus while we are Muslim? And his father tells him the story, and he says, we are originally converted, we were forced to convert. And so Bakr, what he did, once he finds out, he goes to the Armenian church in Istanbul, and he wanted to convert. And then he gets married to an Armenian woman from Armenia, because he wanted to have Armenian child, so the child can go to an Armenian school in Istanbul. Otherwise, they cannot send the child into an Armenian school if the parents are not Armenian. So from there, I was really shocked, and I started to research more and more, and then I came to this whole idea, and the whole thing became more even on the surface when the Armenian Turkish journalist was killed, Hrant Dink, in 2007 by a 17-year-old nationalist in front of his office. He was stabbed from his back. And that was for me, like, I really should do this project now more than any time ever.
Yeah. And is there anything that we need to explain to maybe someone that doesn't know the history of Armenians in the Ottoman Empire, and like why it is such a huge thing that these conversions happened?
Yeah, sure. So the reason when the Armenian genocide happened, and there were, of course, the Ottomans were killing a lot of women and men and children, but there were also some cases. Until now, it's unknown the amount of people, because none were registered, the ones who were converted into Islam back then. So the numbers, they say it's between 1.5 million to 2 million people converted. So what happened is, during the genocide, there were some people who were offered to convert into Islam and not to get killed. So they had these two choices: either get killed or to convert into Islam. So some of the people, they just converted into Islam. And from then until today, these people in Turkey, they call them the ones who fled the edge of the sword. They call them this name, or they also call them kavur, which means the kafir in Arabic, which means in English, it means the, how do you call it? The ones who convert from, the ones not Muslim. I forgot the name. It's so that's.
I can't help you, I'm afraid.
No, I know. I will check later. It's in Turkish. It's gavur. So that's what happened. And in the recent days when Hrant Dink was killed, because Hrant Dink, he brought up documents to the public proving that one of the daughters of the founder of the Turkish Republic, Kemal Atatürk, one of the adopted daughters is actually Armenian. And her name is Sabha, and Sabha was the first war pilot in the Republic of Turkey. So Hrant Dink brought documents that this girl, that is the daughter of Atatürk, she's originally Armenian. And then, of course, the Turkish public did not take that easily, and that's how he got murdered in 2007. But from then, it just kind of awakened many people where they started to realize that they don't have any stories, or they don't know any stories from their grandparents. They don't know anything about their grandparents, and they started to dig more and more, and they started to find out that actually I have Armenian origins. So with the help of Agos, for instance, the newspaper of Hrant Dink, they go into documents and birth certificates and start to dig, and they realize they have Armenian roots. So some of them, what they do is they go to the Armenian church in Istanbul and they convert into Christianity, and they get an Armenian name. But all this happens in complete secrecy, because the Turkish public would not take it easily, this whole movement of conversion from Islam into another religion. And also from the other side is the Armenians. The Armenian community in Istanbul are very worried, because if this movement gets bigger and bigger, it means that the eyes will open even more on the Armenian community in Turkey. So that will jeopardize their existence, to their security or whatsoever. So from then, they were also rejecting this movement as Armenians.
So from both sides, there's like an element of secrecy from both sides, right?
Yes, and rejection too.
Yeah. And I guess for the people that are converting, that must be a really difficult thing, because on one hand, they're looking for a place. They're looking for a place like within their own history. They're looking to find themselves, and then to have to keep it a secret at the same time is really, it must be very conflicting, actually.
It is very conflicting, and it's kind of putting themselves into danger.
Yeah.
It has that element too, because that's also the reason they move from smaller cities into big city, because then because in smaller cities, everybody know each other. Even until today, they know that originally this family is originally Armenian, and they know that they call them Gavur, the infidel. That's what it means, Gavur, infidel. So until today, even they practice Islam and they have Muslim names, but since their ancestors were Christians and they converted into Islam, they call them until today Gavur, the infidels.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
and so escaping that, they move into the bigger city, which is Istanbul or other cities, but it's mainly Istanbul because that's also where the Armenian church is and other churches, and where they can also hide.
Mm-hmm. And when you, so the images are so they're actually like in stark contrast to Istari actually. So Istari is this kind of internal architectural spaces with no like void of people, and then a portrait, but it's a portrait where you can't identify the sitter actually. So you had to, it was really difficult to get access to these individuals, and then when you did get access, you had to really maintain their you couldn't reveal their identity.
Yes, that's absolutely true. And I mean, the whole process took me 3 years to find 9 families. And once we got into hold to Bakr, and he said, come to Istanbul and I will introduce you. So I went there and stayed 1 month there and meeting families. And the process was quite intense because I didn't do this project, or I didn't visit the families many times. I just went them for once because I didn't have also time to stay longer. So what the way I did it is I go to the house, and the house is where the place where they feel comfortable, they feel safe. I listened to their stories, and that took like 1.5 hours. It's also, we shared stories also from my side, and then we had dinner 1.5 hour, and then I had this half an hour where I took pictures in the space, either with the person or sometimes without the person. And it was very interesting because there were few, for instance, Becker said, just you can put my name, you know, it's sort of revenge for me, just to show the Turks that what I did is because what you have done to my grandparents. You know, I want you to know that's it's because of you I'm doing this. Of course, there are others who were afraid and they didn't want to get involved in this, and they just, for instance, one of them is a very famous rock singer in Istanbul. And his story is really very beautiful because when he was a child, he used to go to the Armenian church in Istanbul, in his neighborhood, every Sunday, just to listen to the mass. And he was amazed with the Gomidas. And one day, the priest in the church, he found out that he's not Armenian, so he kicked him out of the church.
Wow.
And so he goes really sad. He goes back to home, and then his father takes him and he sits with him. He said, "Listen, I have to tell you, we are Armenians. Your grandfather is Armenian, and he is from the Black Sea." So in him, it stays this whole notion of being rooted as an Armenian. And then once he became an adult, he goes to the Armenian church in Istanbul, asks them to be converted, and they refuse because he's a very famous singer. And so what he does, he goes to Germany to another Armenian church, and there he gets baptized. And he had like a cross necklace on his neck, but he always hides it. And he said, the moment the public will see this, my career will finish. And this was in 2012, but I think it's changed now. He sort of announced publicly, but I don't think he lives in Turkey or he's based in Turkey anymore.
These are really like super interesting stories, and very like layered, and stories that go back to people's childhoods. When you present the photographs, though, you obviously don't reveal any of this. They're
I keep them for myself.
yeah, you keep them for yourself. And how did you come to that decision? Because I guess you could have anonymously written some kind of text or
Text.
something that, like narratives that helped illustrate this. But the images themselves, you came up with this kind of visual way to approach the body of work that is very much about lighting and about the darkness.
Obscurity, yes.
Yeah, the darkness, and then this very, very strong kind of shards of light that appear in various places in the images. So there was that visual side of the project that's like a very specific decision on your behalf. And then also that other decision to keep all of those stories for yourself or private.
Yeah, I mean, I'm
away
always,
from you,
yeah, I'm always aware of this, and I'm also afraid that I won't give the full right, or not the right, the value of these stories by just summarizing few lines and just put it on the wall. You know, I think here also for me it's more important the big picture, that this is something is happening now, regardless this individual stories. But the main reason is the same. If we, I mean, if we go back and listen to everyone, it's like the main story. It's the Armenian Genocide. It's you know, and I think that's how I balance the visuals with the
with the story.
with the stories.
And
Yes.
and how did you, was the visual approach that you took, did that come out of necessity of the way that, like, the environment in which you had to shoot in, or before you started shooting you knew that that was the approach you were going to take?
No, before I equipped myself beforehand, and I knew, I mean, when I was working on the project, doing the research from the beginning, visually, I just knew that this is the way I want to do this this project. And this project is my first time where I use artificial light in the during the shooting. It's always the ambient light, but this one I just tried. I mean, I did some tryouts before I leave to Istanbul. I've been working on it before so just because I knew the time-wise will be very strict with visiting families, and you know, so I'd rather be fully prepared and yeah.
And do you always work alone in these environments? So sometimes you have like maybe someone else with you, but not in the capacity of helping you with the shoot, right?
No, yeah, I can't work with anyone else. I have to be alone underneath the camera, because I think if there is someone next to me, I really get anxious and get confused. And with the analog, with the view camera, you have to be very precise. You can't mess up, because you don't see, also with the analog you don't see the image, you have to go back to develop. So I don't want to take the risk. I want to be fully the one who is taking the picture and be involved in the image making.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And just before we move on to the final projects to talk about, one thing that I think is really interesting about Unexposed is that I think compared to lots of your other bodies of work, it hasn't been exhibited as much. It was exhibited in the 2015 Venice Biennale. It was in the pavilion, the Armenian pavilion, and the pavilion actually won the Golden Lion. And the pavilion was all diaspora artists, so all artists of Armenian descent, but from the diaspora, so had grown up and live outside of what is now the Republic of Armenia. So it featured in that, it was exhibited in that pavilion. But other than that, to my knowledge, it hasn't been exhibited that much compared to,
no,
you know.
No, because I applied for this prize and a few years ago with this project, and the project got accepted with by the jury. But this same prize company, or I don't know how would you call it, they contacted their office in Istanbul and saying, okay, we have this project. Is it okay if we go with it? And they said no. So they denied the prize for me. So I didn't get the prize. And I was really angry. And I knew because, of course, it's about, they don't want to show this. But a year later, I was invited to show at in Marseille. It was the capital cultural city in 2013, and they fully funded the production of this project. And they said, "Yeah, go for it." And that was where I showed it the first time. But I think it's the reason, as you said, it's not shown quite a lot. It's because of the subject.
Yeah, I think it's and especially from the perspective of a curator, I mean, a lot of your work is political, and a lot of your work has this this kind of research into difficult histories that have these different political associations with them. Although it's relatively easy to show some of your other projects, yet this one feels risky in a way.
Yeah, I think it's also, maybe people think I'm doing this, it's about religion, but it is totally not. It's not about the religion. It's about what the Armenians went through, and this is something happened to us. It's not about the converting into another religion, but it's about. I mean, we've been living in this trauma for more than 100 years now, and still it's not recognized from the culprits. And that's the reason why I wanted to do this project. It's not about showing anything negative about Islam, or which is, I mean, that's not me. You know, I think this is what people always take into consideration. They afraid to show this project. Probably, I mean, that's my
yeah, I think it's really interesting, this of course bringing up like the most obvious thing, which is the religion aspect of it, right? And
yeah, of course.
And if you center on that, then it becomes a very different type of conversation.
That's also problematic, because if you're completely blind, then you're not seeing the real problem. What is the real problem? Religion doesn't say go kill people. It's never in the religion, you know. That's the problem.
Yeah. I'm really glad it's being shown now, though, in Sweden.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah,
it's getting some breath.
Yes. Okay, so finally, I just wanted to see if we have time to talk about one last project, Final Flight. And the reason why I wanted to bring this project into the talk as well is that it's also about, it's a project that's about kind of migration and movements, and also about things appearing and disappearing, and these changes and extinction, these changes throughout history that and things that we think that are lost but then appear again. It has this project has a really kind of layered conversation around it. It's also one of the projects, so you do a lot of, your work is primarily still photography, but you also make work in video and you make installations. But this is the first body of work where you really moved into something much more sculptural.
Which I didn't use my own photography also.
Yeah, okay. And yeah, do you want to talk about the project? Because I think the sculptural element is super interesting, because it's also about like, it's recreating something that you can't photograph in a way.
So the project I came, Final Flight, it's about this bird. It's called Northern Bald Ibis, and it's historically it dates from like 5,200 years old bird. The bird is mentioned in the Old Testament as the fertility messenger, and the Egyptians had the god Thoth, which is the human body with the head of a bird. this same bird, which is the god of wisdom and writing. And also in the region, in the Middle East, in Islam, this bird was used to be the guide for the people who went to Mecca for pilgrimage. So they followed this bird all the way to Mecca. The bird was as a guide for them. So the bird existed in Syria, specifically in Palmyra. And Palmyra is like one of the oldest kingdoms. And so until the 30s, and in late 80s, the government confirmed the extinction of this bird. And in 2002, the Bedouins found 7 birds nesting like in a colony near Palmyra. So they informed the government, and of course the government did not pay any attention to these birds or to the Bedouins, and thinking, oh, this is an anecdote. And there was this Italian biologist, Gianluca Serra, who heard about this these birds, and he flew all the way to Palmyra to confirm and also to study these birds. So Gianluca lived in Palmyra for 9 years. And with the help of the first Syrian lady, they built a breeding center where they started to breed more of these birds. So among these 7 birds, there was one female bird, and they named her Zenobia, which is the name of the kingdom, the queen of the kingdom. And Zenobia was the only female bird who knew the migratory route from Palmyra all the way to Ethiopia. And all the other birds followed this bird during migratory season. So what happened, the breeding center, they raised, the numbers started to increase. During the years, they reached 17 birds. So these birds used to fly from Palmyra to Ethiopia, wintertime, crossing over 7 to 8 countries. And so each station, they stop for 1 month, and then they continue flying. And the first stop was Saudi Arabia for them. So what happened during the years, they started to realize that birds get disappeared when they fly over Saudi Arabia. And one day they traced these birds because they were all tracked by satellites. So they traced one of these birds, and they went to the house of the hunter. And they found this one of the birds. So they explained to him and they told him just not to hunt these, because they are hunting for no reason. It was just to stuff them and become a decoration object. But of course they didn't listen, and within the years the numbers started to decrease again, until in 2013 they saw the last 3 birds in the high midlands of Ethiopia. And in 2014, when ISIS entered Palmyra, 13-14, of course everybody fled, and that was the last time they saw Zenobia, the female bird, for the last time, and now the bird is extinct again. So the thing is, this bird exists in Europe, in Turkey, for instance, in Spain, Austria, Italy, and also in Turkey they have a breeding center, but none of these birds are migratory. So the ones that were extinct are the migratory ones. So the rest are all in breeding centers, and recently they are reintroducing them to migrate.
And you kind of researched this story and found out about this story, and then you obviously couldn't photograph the birds, right?
Yeah.
But there's kind of 2 things that you were really interested in visualizing. One was the bird itself in whatever form that was available, and then the other thing was the route, the flight path, right?
Yes.
And do you want to speak a little bit about what the end result of the project looks like?
Yeah, so the way I wanted to construct this work is sorry, it was, for me, it was more relevant to show the end of the birds, which is like the skulls. So I show 7 skulls. And it's also the beginning of the story, and also at the same time is the end. They started with 7 and they ended up as a skull. And so there's next to it a 9-hour video where it's filmed the migratory route from Palmyra all the way to Ethiopia, and with the same height that these birds usually fly and the same speed, more or less. And so that's on a screen, and there is like one photograph I found online taken by Italian diplomat in Palmyra of 2 of these birds. This was the last time they were photographed in Palmyra, and the last element is it's a map where a map of the region with a relief where we cut through the migratory routes, and you can see this line how they usually fly. And this line eventually ended up like a noose as well on the map. So this is the whole. This is how the work eventually was presented.
Unfolds.
The installation, yes.
Yeah, yeah. And just finally on this project, so obviously you grew up in Syria, and you haven't been able to go back, at least recently anyway. So was an element of this project and the research of this project around that kind of movement of the birds going and coming from that part of the world?
I mean, for me, it also represents the situation where what the Syrian has been going through this past 10, 11 years since the beginning of the war. I mean, and this is in these birds, I see also what the Syrians has been through. You know, it's kind of similar story. So that's what also pulled me even more to do this project. It's not a direct one, but it's kind of I mean, I can see myself also in it.
Yeah, yeah, and yeah, it's this cycle of things as well. The cycle of extinction and then, or near extinction,
migration, yes.
Yeah, migration and then coming back again. A really fascinating project, and something that has really taken this leap outside of photography as well.
True. Yeah, I mean, that's someone was pointed me the other day that this is you don't have any photographs in this project, right? I said no, and I was really also surprised that that's really true. I mean, I like it's it's kind of, for me, it opened like another door, you know. But I still love photography, and I will continue doing what I do, you know. But sometimes it's nice, it's refreshing also to get out of the box and also do look at things in a different way.
Yeah, and for someone that started off in such a classical background in photography, this is such a huge departure actually from where you started.
Yeah, totally, yes.
So,
I agree.
So really a really nice kind of journey that you've been on.
A big jump.
Yes, yeah. But with lots of really amazing work that's been made along the way.
Thank you.
I think that's where we'll end it today. But thank you so much for sharing your work and for sharing your stories. It's really great to have a conversation with you, and for you to reveal some of those stories behind the projects that we don't get to hear about when we see things on the wall.
Thank you, Shoair. It's always nice talking to you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Really great to speak to you, and thank you to Landskrona Festival. And I hope lots of people get to see the show.
Yes, thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.